It wasn't quite a comb over, but I was covering the top of my head. I haven't got a penalty spot baldness. Not like Zinedine Zidane, the famous French footballer who headbutted. Who did he headbutt? He headbutted Marco Materazzi. That's right, the ex-Everton player in the World Cup final. He lost the plot. He went mental, and he had a little penalty spot, a little football spot, a little ball on the top of his head, and he did the brave thing. And I think that, guys of a certain age, I don't think you should do what is now known as the Chris Jeffries and have a horrendous comb over. The poor guy who was, he's now being released on police bail. Of course, it was the major story over the Christmas period. Innocent until proven guilty, and it may be the only thing that fella's guilty of is having a horrendous comb over. And for some reason, that starts, I've never seen a comb over start from the back of the head, from the actual, if you like, the top of the spine. I've never seen a comb over like that. He's got a comb over. I don't think I'd ever consider a comb over. Would I consider a weave? Well, I don't think so. I think I took the plunge at 25, 26. Everyone now knows me as having no hair. I have to shave it every 2 or 3 days. And you know what? I think sometimes it suits people. I think 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I don't think it would have been as appropriate to have quote-unquote a shaved head or quote-unquote a skinhead as it is now. A lot of the ladies like running their fingers through no hair. Well, this is my experience, and of course in the summer it's wonderful, and it's baking hot. You jump in the shower after a run or whatever, you just dry your head. It takes you 1 second, that's it, you're out and about. None of this having to sort of prune yourself in front of a mirror with all the latest styling products and all the, drying your hair and the tongs, the hot tongs, and none of that nonsense, fellas. Come on, if you are going bald, then surely I guess what you should do is just take the plunge and just keep it very, very short. Maybe not like to the bone, not to the nub, not to the wood, but keep it very, very short rather than just sort of growing it out. There's nothing worse than the fried tuck look, in my opinion. So listen, if you want to get in touch, I'd like to hear maybe your experiences when you were going bald. In all seriousness, I was very unhappy at the time. I don't think I spiraled into depression about losing my hair, but I was very, very, very upset. And it went on for a good 2 or 3 years. I never confided in everyone or anyone. I didn't get any counselling. We're going to be talking to a guy who's had 8 hair transplants, who now actually provides a counselling service for men who, like I was going through 15 years ago, going through male pattern baldness and the initial early stages. Listen, if you want to get involved, I'd like to hear from you. And also, ladies, had you have any influence and input on whether your fella would actually take the plunge and just shave their head completely? Or what would you reckon? Would you rather he had a little bit of a Chris Jeffries comb over? Pick up the phone, 08453 009956. Danny.Kelly, that's the email address, danny.kelly at bbc.co.uk, danny.kelly at bbc.co.uk. We're also going to be hearing a little bit of the best of schedule here at WM, play a little bit of the fantastic Boston Breakfast Show. The texts are up and running. That is 81333. Don't forget to start your text with WM, leave a space, and then your message. Is succumbing to male pattern baldness. I remember when he was released from his, was it a 2-week or a 4-week prison sentence for driving under the influence. Once again, bit of a record there. I think he's keeping it fairly close to the old nugget. Whether he'd have a comb over or not, I don't know. I'm just racking my brain for other famous comb overs. We've got Chris Jeffries. He's got a reverse comb over. How he has managed to cover his head from the actual bottom of his head, from the bottom of his skull, and he's managed to sweep it all the way up. Any other famous comb overs, please? 08453, got the footballer, what was it? It was one of the Charlton brothers. 08453 009956. Famous sweep overs. Famous wig wearers, if you like. 08453 009956. I'm sure there's plenty of famous sweep overs. Listen, it's a sensitive, and men, by the way, men can, honestly, they can spiral into depression. I suppose I got off quite lightly, retrospectively, looking back at it. My pals took the mickey out of me when I was losing my hair, and they came up with all the old cliches and all the old nicknames and things like that. But it was, at the time, it probably took me about a good 6 months to sort of recover mentally, I promise you. But you know what? It was like a breath of fresh air when I actually had my head shaved. It really was. And it was like almost, it was a cathartic experience, I guess. Because a lot of people, I suppose, when we're going to hear from our next guest, a lot of people really, well, they suffered from it terribly and it can go on. And we're going to talk about it right now. Scientists in America say they're closer than ever to finding a solution for baldness. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania believe they've found a way to reawaken dormant follicle cells and promote hair growth. But what is wrong with going bald? Loads of well-known men have admitted having their transplants. James Nesbitt says it changed his life. Gordon Ramsay has been photographed leaving a clinic in the States just this week. Shane Warne, Michael Vaughan, Graham Gooch all advertise hair loss treatments. In fact, I believe they're the weave-in type wig. But what's so wrong with going bald? Is it all about self-esteem or is it simply vanity? We're going to call this guy SPEX, okay? To protect his identity and his dignity. He lives in the Midlands. He's had 8 hair transplants and he's set up a very successful website, a counselling website, and it's called spexhair.com. Let me spell that for you. SPEXHAIR.com to help others come to terms with going bald. He's on the line. Specs, good afternoon.
Hi there, Danny. How you doing?
I'm fine. Good to speak to you. How old are you, Specs?
I'm 35 years old, Danny.
I first started going bald, well, I noticed I was going bald at, say, 25, 26. And then, you know, after a couple of years of contemplation, I decided to shave it off. And I managed to successfully deal with it, Specs. But obviously, with yourself, it was more deep-rooted. Would that be fair?
Very fair indeed. And likewise, I mean, I started losing my hair at a very young age, at 21. And like yourself, I tried to sport the buzz cut, take it right down to the bone. And I really tried it for quite some time. However, I just psychologically just could not deal with it. I just did not feel that it was me and the image that I wanted to portray, and it didn't really reflect my personal identity as far as I was concerned. And it's certainly something that a lot of individual guys can relate to. Many guys initially, once they find they're losing their hair, do attempt to take their hair down quite short, but unfortunately, it comes to light that it's a deeper-rooted issue than just shaving off. And all power to you, Danny, for being able to shave it down, chalk it up, and move on. You know, there are people out there that can do that, but what I've realized over the 10 years that I've been counseling guys is that very few guys can actually do that. Numerous guys tend to be haunted by this anxiety and lack of self-esteem that their hair loss presents them on a daily basis. And it's because hair loss ultimately is out of our control unless you medicate it appropriately and go about treating it the right way. So, yeah, I you know, indeed, it's certainly a personal thing.
Sure.
And
so I Specs, by the sound of it, I've got off quite lucky. What percentage of fellas would you say needed some counselling and were very upset, and it becomes a more deep-rooted, spiralling into depression almost?
Oh, well, I mean, hair loss is a hidden epidemic, ultimately. It's not spoken about. Very few people can openly discuss it. And in terms of a percentage, it's very hard to put a figure on it. However, I speak with hundreds of guys a month, all making inquiries with regards to what they can do with regards to their hair loss. And it ranges from guys that are just, you know, starting out in life, ultimately at, you know, 17, 18 years old, up to 65, 70-year-old guys. It's all relative to that individual. But as a percentage, you know, I would easily say that 50% of guys ultimately will experience some level of hair loss before the age of kind of 30, 35.
Okay, right, that is how they deal with it. Okay, good. Now, you yourself, I read here, Specs, 8 hair transplants. So at what age were you when you decided to actually have a transplant? Obviously, it was unsuccessful, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. Prior to hair transplants, I'd gone down the whole hair laser wig route, which was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to kind of dealing with my demons because I wanted a quick fix.
When you say a wig, Specs, do you mean just like literally a little bit of carpet, to be crude about it, or a more intricate woven grey
kind of hit the nail on the head, Danny. It's the wigs are very unnatural, and me personally, I can spot one a mile away.
Yeah.
Wigs are it's a personal thing. It really is a personal thing. I couldn't deal with it. It was a real foreign object on my head, and as soon as I could get it off, I did.
But didn't your friends suss your Specs?
Well, I had it on such a brief moment of time, and with regards to the issues I also dealt with hair loss, I isolated myself a great deal of the time. I often get asked, how did no one ever actually realise? Because no one actually knows I've had a hair transplant, never mind 8, other than my sister, my mother, and my wife. So I've kind of led a double life with regards to hiding my journey. However, ironically, I help and counsel hundreds of thousands of guys over the years. But with regards, going back to the question, I had eight hair transplants over a course of several years. And initially, this was 10 years ago when I first had my first ever hair transplant, which was done by very inappropriately an unethical surgery. And back then, I wasn't educated, I wasn't informed. The internet wasn't anywhere near as powerful as it is now in terms of educating hair loss sufferers. And that's what I highly advise people do. Once they realise they've got, hair loss becomes an issue to them, they need to step back and gain perspective rather than jumping in like I did. And that's why I offer my services, because I've made many mistakes along the way, and now I try to make sure others don't make the same mistakes I did within this ruthless industry.
Well, listen, Specs, is it okay if I take a quick 2 or 3 minute musical break, and then we'll talk about the mistakes that you made and how you can help other men, and we'll also talk about why you've had 5, 6, 7, and now your 8th hair transplant. I'll be back to you after a bit of Jackie Wilson. Is that okay?
Okay, Danny.
Thank you, Paul. Famous comb-overs on the text. Robert Robinson from Call My Bluff. I remember him, but I don't remember he had a comb-over. Donald Trump must have the most ambitious comb-over ever, so says Matt. That's right. And he's just bought a windy golf course in Scotland, hasn't he? To finding the solution for baldness once again this year. Yet there's another miracle cure for baldness. Let's go back to Specs from spexhair.com, SPEX hair, HAIR.com, who has had 8 hair transplants. Specs, welcome back.
Hi, Danny.
The average hair transplant, can you put a figure on that? The average hair transplant. And when we talk about hair transplants, I guess that means taking the live, healthy follicles from the thicker parts of hair and transplanting it into the bald pate. Is that right?
That's correct, Danny. But to put a figure on the average cost of a hair transplant is very difficult to do, because it's ultimately how long is a piece of string. It all depends on the surface area that needs to be addressed, and how large that is will reflect the number of grafts that's required. And that would be proportionate to the price. But if you want to put a figure on it, the average approximate hair transplant will be anywhere from the region to £6,000 to £10,000.
So, just doing simple maths, you must have spent the best part of 30, 40 grand.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I've been quoted recently today in one of the papers that, I spent £40,000 in total over a 10-year period, approximately. However, people shouldn't base their kind of journey on mine. I made several mistakes along the way with outdated surgeries by unethical clinics. And today, with a very good, reputable clinic, and there are several out there, if you choose wisely, do your research, and understand the long-term journey of hair transplants, there's no reason why you can't achieve a fantastic result in one surgery, which I could have done. I could have resolved my situation if I knew now what I knew then in one go, and would have cost in the region of £8,000.
Specs, what difference has it made to you?
Oh, it's completely changed my whole persona, my outlook. I'm much more kind of much happier, living life rather than being constantly dragged down with this issue of hair loss. I mean, ironically, even though I've spent so much money and time and helped so many people with hair loss and their hair loss issues, ironically, I don't even think about my hair now, as possibly you don't, I've resolved my situation through repair surgeries, and now I get on with my life as everybody should do, really, and not have this issue of hair loss hanging over them, which is very consuming. It's a very draining issue.
No, I can understand that. Specs, a texter has asked me to ask you, does it come from the female line of the family, male pattern baldness? For example, my granddad on my mum's side, who died 4 or 5 years ago, he was bald. Yeah,
it is a genetic lottery. However, it's kind of seen that it comes via the maternal gene pool. So therefore, if your grandfather on your mother's side, and it was the case with mine, loses their hair, then chances are you will too. But it is a genetic lottery. Okay,
Specs, thank you so much. So you're a well-balanced man, but interestingly, you don't want us to use your proper name after all you've gone through.
Well, ironically, even though I've spent all this time helping hair loss sufferers, I've interacted on the online forums, which I mentioned briefly before, which is where people should, there's powerful resources out there in the forum community. And I've resided there for some time, and now it's a case of, because I've helped so many people and I interact on a daily basis, people know me by my pseudonym as SPEX.
Okay.
And people know my name. It's immaterial, really. But I kept my hair loss issues a secret from my real world, and I like to keep it that way.
SPEX, can I thank you so much for your time? We're very grateful, and I'm delighted that you're feeling happier in yourself and more well balanced, and only 2 or 3 people know about it, which I guess is just how you like it. So thank you so much.
Indeed. Thanks very much, Danny, for having me on the show.
No, thank you very much. From spexhair.com, spexhair.com. Now listen, if you have gone through what SPEX has gone through, then I'd like to hear from you, and just like we did with SPEX, we can change your name if you're embarrassed, or if you're feeling, I don't know, a little bit awkward about it, then please pick up the phone.